So shalom, salam alaikum, good afternoon, good evening, masa al-khir, erev tov. And our panelists, really my dear friends, I really thank you for joining today and sharing your ideas and thoughts and emotions and wisdom with us. Each one of you is so close to me. We are engaged in so many different activities in many platforms together. You know, Roshi Bernie Glassman used to talk in favor of infinite networking and the top importance of socially engagement. I feel that in our circle today, we are representing these two leading elements of Bernie's vision: networking, diversity, and socially engagement. We are here together from different parts of what we called the Holy Land, but of the Middle East in another way of saying. And we have here Maysam Jaljuli. Hi, Maysam. Living in, okay, I won't say anything. Maysam, because living where and who is who and who is what is, this is the thing of our complicated situation. So Maysam Jaljuli is with us, a colleague, my colleague in our socially action, Hafez Filfil, again, a very good colleague and friend, Professor Daniel Bartal, another colleague and friend, Fatma Rashid Said Al-Akruka, I hope I say your name correctly, my very dear friend, and Dr. Ziad Darwish, another friend of mine. So I will invite you, jumping to our talk as fast as we can. I will invite you to introduce yourself. I will moderate the discussion, so only I'm mentioning, I wouldn't introduce myself in very many details, only to mention that I live in Tel Aviv, and I'm socially engaged in a variety of peace activities, actually with each one of the, what we call the panelists. So we will start. I will ask you, my dear friends, to introduce yourself, trying to tell us who are you, like the name, where you live, what is your main platform of social and professional activity. So maybe we will start with Maysam.
So hello everybody. يعطيكم العافية. I'm Maysam Jaljuli. It's very complicated when we are talking about identity. I live in Israel, but I'm a Palestinian Israeli citizen. I live in the center of Israel, the area called is the Triangle, and it's, you know, it's a half an hour from Tel Aviv if there is no traffic. So I live in a city called Tira, and I'm married, a mother of 3. I'm a very social and a political and a feminist activist in Israel. I'm the co-chair of Na'amat in the Triangle area. Na'amat is the biggest women organization in Israel, and it's connected to the labor union, to the Histadrut. I'm also co-chair of Sikui. Sikui is an NGO that seeks for equality and shared society in Israel. And I'm also a member of Naqif Ma'an, Omdim Biyahad, Standing Together. I'm a very active member in this Arab Jewish organization that works to seek peace, equality, and social justice, and a lot of other issues. So it's enough till now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maisam. Hafez, tell us
Yes.
about you. Tell us about you, where you live. What is your main issues
Yes.
in life?
Thank you, my dear. Thank you so much. Hello for everybody. My name is Hafiz Filfil. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
No? Yeah. My name is Hafiz Filfil. I am from Gaza. I'm social worker and working at Gaza Community Mental Health Program as a logistical officer. I'm married and have three children. My thing and talent to see this area in a quiet mood and time, without any kind of violence, without any kind of war, live together as neighbors without any problems and borders. As you know, I'm a member in psychoactive group also, and that's it. That's about me.
Thank you, Hafez. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Daniel Bartal, Professor Daniel Bartal.
Okay, thank you. I just identify at least two people that I know, of course, Ziad, and I think that Mason, we were together in a group, right?
Yes.
So nothing came out of it, but at least we met, right? So I really come with three hats, if I would have to define myself. One hat is academia. At the moment I am emeritus, but I spent almost 50 years in academia. And as an academia person, I would like to define myself as a person of conception and theory as well of research, which means that I carry all kinds of empirical studies with different methods. So this will be one head. Another head is an activist. Since I remember myself, I was a member of political groups beginning when I was studying for my first degree in Tel Aviv University. I began my study in '67, and I joined what was at that time called SIAH, a discourse, was leftist group that started immediately after a Six-Day War. And I continued through the years in the Peace Now movement and other organizations, always feeling that it's my duty as a human being to struggle for a better world in general terms. So, and the third head is practitioners, which means that I don't only demonstrate, but also try to be involved in various NGOs and help with my first head being academia person who collected knowledge, absorbed knowledge, and kind of provide better activity, as for example, Mason and I, we were trying to do something which unfortunately was unsuccessful, but this is just one example where we tried to build an umbrella organization that would help different NGOs active in the state of Israel. But now also I am searching for outlets that I can help, and I hope that this is one of them, so that I can share my knowledge with other people. Okay, I live in Herzliya, very close to Iris. It's only about probably 2 kilometers. And I have 4 children and 6 grandchildren.
Iris, you are muted.
Thank
Sorry?
you. No, thank you, Danny. And I'm
Okay.
moving to Fatma.
Hi, everyone. I am Fatma Rashid Lagruga, a woman from Kuwait, live in the city of Kuwait. Daniel, Professor Katz, maybe the idea of being a woman in Kuwait got to have a family with 6 brothers, 5 sisters, so we are dozen. And alhamdulillah, we raised in such a good environment that equality and respect and love is the most important issue. I get my education, and after that, I experienced so many jobs in the Ministry of Education, teaching student even with special needs, and get to the Ministry of Information with the presenting some TV program for the family and the student, and also get the opportunity also to create my family. And within that period, I left my job and work and stayed 3 years with my family, small family. I have one nice young gentleman right now. He's 28 years old. And then I returned back to the Ministry of Education, working with the National Bureau for Accreditation and Quality Assurance, and get the opportunity also to be a cultural attaché for Kuwait in United Arab Emirates. And I experienced that with culture, we have to do a lot of things. We can't really forget our borders and barriers through culture, because it is really nice bridge to get through everyone. As an activist, alhamdulillah, I experienced the work with so many NGOs in my country and abroad. Last one, it is WPPI 1320. It is a United Nations resolution regarding the privacy and the peace for women in the conflict area. I think everyone have to look for that. And with this initiative, with very good coordination and cooperation with the WFWB, it is I know Iris. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatma. Thank you very much. And my dear Ziad, Dr. Ziad Darwish, tell us about yourself.
Well, first of all, assalamu alaikum. Hi, everybody. And it's nice to see very friendly faces, and that long time with intimate and act together. I'm a Palestinian living in Ramallah in the occupied territories of Palestine. And my major is journalism, TV and radio. I work for the United Nations and Fondation Hirondelle as manager of the media at the radio of the United Nations in Khartoum in Sudan for a few years. And afterwards I moved to Tunisia, where I practice and instruct the journalists over there in their national radio after the revolution there in Tunisia. When I came back, I said to myself, of course, I forgot to mention that I'm an academic, and I taught at the Jerusalem University, Al-Quds University, journalism. And when I came back, I decided to move towards try to make peace in a way. And I joined a committee of the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, that called the Committee for Interaction with Israeli Society. And since 10 years, we have been trying to join activities with our friends in Israel, like you, Iris and Professor Bartal, and of course, my son and others, where that we try to pave the way towards a peace between Palestinians and Israelis, and try in a way to influence the leadership to stop occupation of our land. Well, this myself, I'm married with 3 kids, 1 daughter that I'm visiting her now in Florida. I didn't have the chance to see her 6 years, so yeah, I decided to come and have my vacations with her here in Florida, and I have 4 grandchildren, and that's me.
Thank you, Ziad Darwish. Thank you, everybody. So let's talk. So let's tell us, try out of your personal perspective, how do you perceive the situation and the dynamic processes here in our area? I would say the Holy Land, Middle East, Israel-Palestine, Palestine-Israel, and try to tell us how it is. How is it connected to you personally, like your family, the history of your family? Yeah. In other words that we are using very often here, how do you see the narrative? What is the narrative that you believe in? So we will begin, we will start with Dr. Ziad Darwish. Please, Ziad.
Well, since that I believe as a Palestinian that we are under occupation, and this occupation must end to our land. And the peace that we are talking about, it's a peace that gives the full right of the Palestinians to establish their independent state and finish the suffering that extended since 1947. And we are under occupation from 1967, almost 54 years. It's about time to finish that occupation. But when we talk about peace and the peace that the Americans and the Israelis did with the Arab countries, jumping over the Palestinian crisis, an issue, This is not a peace. This is an interests of both countries or three countries, and still, thanks God that still countries like Kuwait, for instance, okay, that it's a good country, that they believe that the Palestinians have to solve their crisis by establishing their independent state alongside the state of Israel, and not instead of the state of Israel, of course. And we Palestinians, we gave everything. We tried everything. We have agreed on 22% from the historical Palestine, and give this 78% to the establishment of the state of Israel. We agreed on that. But in spite of that, we're still witnessing daily, expansion of the settlements and the settlers, that they are abusing our people, killing them, cutting their trees, demolishing their houses, and keeping on all that. I mean, where's the whole world? Look what happened in Gaza, for instance. It's destruction, total destruction. It's a war. It's not operation as the Israeli military forces said. It's operation. No, it's a war by all means. I mean, it's destruction. It's time that the world have to wake up and say, come on, there is no more occupations all over the world. But in Palestine, yes, it's kept on this occupation. So we're looking forward to finish that. I believe that a good portion of Israelis, one of the polls says it's more or less 45% that they want peace. And now it's deteriorating. It's went to 35% of the Israelis that they want peace. But for the Palestinians, yes, we want peace, but not on the conditions that Israel is imposing to solve the Palestinian crisis. So I think it's about time, again, that the whole world will wake up and say, enough is enough, and let's give the Palestinians an independent state. And again, the peace that happened between some Arab countries and Israel, it's interesting between the two countries, and it's the peace, for instance, to look for the peace between Jordan and Israel, Egypt and Israel. It's for the government only, the leaderships and the governments only. What about the people? The people have to enjoy the peace. If you go to Egypt and say, no, we don't want Israelis to come to Egypt, go to Jordan as well. Why? Because it stands as an obstacle, because they have to solve the Palestinian crisis and issue have to come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, Ziad. Thank you so much. Maysam?
Yeah, so I can say that I agree for all of what Ziad had said, Dr. Ziad. And I just want to add, it's a very complicated situation, the situation that we are in right now. Really, for people out of Israel, they think that, okay, the Israeli administration with the last American administration had the Abraham Accord, and we have peace now with the Emirates and Bahrain. And as we see, there is a lot of, tourism between, actually the tourism is from the one side, Israelis that travel to Bahrain and Emirates, and people think that, okay, there is a peace. But the concept peace with these countries is a false concept. It's not peace, because Israel had never been in a war with Bahrain or with Emirates. Israel is, they didn't have any relationship, but it wasn't a war. And some, and it feels that Israel and also the United States and maybe some states of Europe try to escape from the solution of the Palestinian issue. That means try to escape from the responsibility, from the international responsibility of solving the Palestinian issue by establishing a Palestinian state. But meanwhile, the field now is we're having a lot of changes in the field and in the people attitudes towards what is the solution, what we should have. And we all the time said that the solution is the two-state solution, and a Palestinian state should be established next to Israeli state. But right now, especially in the young generation, the young Palestinian generation, and also Israelis, that's starting talking of a concept of one-state solution. A one-state solution, that means that a solution, I agree with you. I don't think that this is the solution, Dr. Ziad, but the field right now, and there is a lot, I'm an old-fashioned, and I still believe that the two-state solution is the solution. It's the only reasonable solution. But the problem that because there is no solution, so people, especially young people, are trying to have other models of solution. And this is a challenge that we are facing right now. You know what? Me as a Palestinian living in Israel, Israeli Palestinian, I think that the challenges that we face as also Palestinian inside Israel and the discrimination that we face, and a lot of time it's a discrimination because that we are a Palestinian. The discrimination is based on our nationality, in our ethnic identity. And Israel till now is refusing to consider us as an ethnic and a national minority. And we are, by Israeli law, unfortunately, by Israeli law, we are considered to be a second-degree citizens. And this is why I also don't want the one-state solution, because I know that the one-state solution will not lead us to equality. It will not lead us to the state of all. I think that the challenges that we are facing, that my generation, Palestinian generation inside Israel faces, is very complicated, because in one hand, we should fight for our rights inside Israel. And the second hand, we don't forget that we should fight for the right of our Palestinian people to have their own independent state, also in Gaza and in the West Bank. And we know that if there will not be a solution for the Israeli issue, for the Israel-Palestine, we also, as citizens of Israel, will suffer a continuation of the discrimination and the racism. So I think that, Dr. Ziad mentioned the world, or the international community. I think and I believe that the main work should be done from the inside Israel and inside Palestine. I think that it's time not to expect anything from, we want them with us, we want them to support, our case. But I think that the main work is depending on us. We should know, Israelis and Palestinians, how we should, find the patterns and the strategies to work together as people to people in order to make, a pressure on our governments and our politicians in order to, sit together and try to find a solution. And this is a huge, huge work, because it's not easy to convince Israelis to deal with the occupation, because unfortunately, I think that they don't feel the occupation. They are sitting in Tel Aviv and in other places in Israel, and they don't, face in daily life basis the occupation. In the second hand, a lot of Palestinian people are desperate. A lot of Palestinian people think that there is no hope, and this is a very hard environment to start working with. That's it for the meanwhile.
Maysam, speaking of home, how many years or generations your family is living around?
Wow, I think, what I know, it's about 400 years ago. This is what the documents that we have from, the family. We are in Tira, lived in Tira, my ancestors 400 years ago.
Thank you. Hafez, how are you doing?
But I'm having a family after, the establishing of Israel, the occupation in 48. My family also now, I have a family in Jordan, I have a family in the West Bank, in Nablus. And so I also have relatives in Gaza. So my family is spread all over.
Yeah, after 48.
Yes, after 48.
Thank you, Maisam. So Hafez.
Yes, dear.
You know, I must tell you only one thing. I know that I don't have to talk. It's not about me. It's about others today, tonight, this evening. But I only want to share one thing, that Hafez is sending me flowers every Friday morning. Every Friday morning, of course, by WhatsApp. It's not real flowers, but every Friday I get a bouquet of flowers from Hafez from Gaza. So
thank you very much, Iris. This is very pleasure to me. But I think it's very hard in the beginning to talk after Dr. Ziad and Maisa, really. But I will talk something totally different about what they said. I will talk about the situation here in Gaza after 16 years of the siege. After 16 years of a lot of suffering. After 4 and hard wars. And especially the last one, the last May, it was unforgettable. It was something crazy, very, very, very crazy. And in this issue, especially in the war, I will talk about my special experience during the war. But the situation here today is they started to ease the siege via Qatar and Egypt and United Nations and Israel. I think the vision now in the world and the American administration support to make Gaza quiet in these days. They are ease the borders and the workers going to Israel and so on. And we have a lot. We have a lot of medicines, and especially in Corona and the Corona crisis, we had a lot of cases, as you hear and you read, in Gaza. And in the first crisis, we don't have vaccination. But now we have vaccinations about Corona, and the situation about this issue is important, is improvement than before. But still the situation is difficult. Unfortunately, still the situation is difficult. I don't have a right, free right to movement. Now, if I want to come to you, Iris, it's very difficult. I need invitation, and I need to get to ask for application for a permit, and of course you have to make an event to invite me before. But it's still not easy. And the most important thing now in Gaza, people are still looking for their eat. There is a problem in the salaries. there is a problem in the unemployment people. A lot of people lost their works and jobs, and there is no resources until now. They are talking about the century deal. They are talking about the extension in Egypt, in Sinai. They will make Gaza more wide in Egypt, and have and will have an extension from Sinai to make investments and working there and so on. And there is a lot of words, a lot of talking about this, and there is no real on the land. Still, people have the crisis. I think Israel want to stay about this quiet, about this case during this time, but nobody have the guarantee that it will be continued, because people still frustrated, people still they are still suffocation about this situation, about this bad issue, and no one guarantee about that. Maybe after 1 hour we will have another war. We are still feel that we are insecure. So, but honestly, the situation is better than the last. A little bit, but it's better. They are trying to improve, to get salaries and benefits from outside and from the borders, from Israel, from Egypt, and so on. But still the people here, as I told you, there is no hope. There is a little people that think that there is a hope at the end of the tunnel, like me, like the people who think there is, after all of this crisis and very complicated issues, I think we can get a good solution with Israel. And also we have a lot of pressure from the Palestinian Authority, as you know, and Maysam and Dr. Ziad, and I don't know if there are other people who know about this, about the salaries and so on for the PA employees. A little of people here think about they can, maybe we'll have peace in the future. But what a kind of peace, what a kind of solution, nobody knows. But about myself, I agree with a solution for one state. All is equal instead of the law. As we before 1948, it was named Holy Land, as you said, Palestine, and whatever you can name it. Muslims, Christians, Jewish lives in this area in Palestine and Holy Land with all the rights. And a lot of people still have the passport from the old government before 1948, like Ruhama Marton, Iris. Ruhama Marton was born before 1948. And I don't know if our friends know Ruhama Marton, Dr. Ruhama Marton. She established and organized the Physician for Human Rights in Israel. And she's a very good person. I like her so much. But this is, at my opinion, this is, I believe in it, on it. But 2 states, it's difficult now, especially in the situation in the Arab land and the world international community. The last thing which I want to talk about, my emotional and bad experience in the last war, last May. Israel declared that during the war, we want to destroy the tunnel in Gaza, and we will call this plan Metro. So they are started to demolish the tunnels after 12 a.m. And they are started to bomb these tunnels. Are you imagine the situation and the quiet in the middle of the night? Nobody in Gaza was asleep. No. So they started area by area, the south of Gaza, the middle of Gaza, the north of Gaza. And a lot of my friends in Sderot and near of Gaza, they are sent to me to message. We are hearing a lot of bombing at your side. What's happening, Hafiz? Tell us, please. They are starting to demolish and to bomb the tunnels half an hour or 40 minutes continuously. Can you imagine the voices and the horrible boop, 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 for 40 minutes? And you stay with your mom, with your family, with your children. As you know, I have 3 children. One of them, the eldest one, he is 10 now, and the other one 9, and the third one, Iyad, he is 5. So can you imagine? Can you imagine what is the father, the model for the family can do in this situation? I remember that night, just I stuck like this on the front of my wife and children. It was a very frightened feelings and angry feelings about what happening. So, and what is the benefit from this war? Nothing at all. And Israel declared that we are failed. We don't have, we don't make our target in this war. But I think at the end, the peace in our hand. If we want to peace, if we want to real peace in our hand, Palestinians and Israelis and Arabs. And in this situation, I'm talking about the leader in Israel and Palestinian. I don't think so that they want to make peace. Maybe in the coming years, if they will change our leader and your leader and our vision about this issue, I think we can make a good future for our children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hafiz. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Danny Bartal.
Okay. I will not refer to the peace process because this refers to the last question, so we'll have an opportunity to talk about it. I would like to begin and say that I fully identify with the rightful struggle of the Palestinians for the independent state. So I think that I belong. If you wanted some kind of diversity, you had to invite some settlers or even not settlers who will provide a rationale for the standing. But I decided, in answer to your question, to take my ahead of academia. In other words, people talk out of their heart, mostly, and absolutely I am empathetic and understand what they are saying. But I would like to take a step aside and to take my academic head and to talk a little bit about first the context of today, and second, talk a little bit about Israeli Jewish population, which I am one of them, in order to understand their standing, not to agree, but just to understand where do they stand. So first, I would say the conflict has, at the moment, we are talking 2021, December, end of the year, several important characteristics. One, we are not talking about occupation. We are talking, I will start, conflicts that goes on for over 100 years. Each side has a very different, contradictory goals. There was violence. There is a long history. Each side has a completely different narrative, what did happen from the beginning of the conflict until today. The two narratives are absolutely irreconcilable. And when you listen one, it's completely taken from I would say, Mars. And it's very difficult to understand. There were attempts, very failed ones, in which groups of Israeli and Palestinians tried somewhat either to create a new one or at least to present one by side of the other one. And it's very, very difficult. Second point is, which I see part of conflict, but it must be stated, that we live under the situation of occupation, where the side that doesn't want to be occupied, which is important point, because we have in the history, in the present time, a situation where the occupied nations want to be occupied. For example, the Russian in Georgia or in other places. So we have only two cases where the occupied population does not get full civil rights, even if they are just seemingly. One is Morocco with regard to the Western Sahara, and second state is Israel with regard to West Bank, so and Gaza, of course. So we have only two cases in the world of today where there is really occupation, which by definition is brutal. It violates human rights. And as Dr. Ziad Darwish, is causes to continuous suffering of Palestinians who live day by day, and their experiences are of being occupied by. So what they see mostly are soldiers face to face in many, many places, in checkpoints, being arrested, etc., etc. Third characteristic, that the conflict is greatly asymmetric, greatly asymmetric. On the one side, you have, I would say, almost a regional superpower. Israel is, in terms of military, in terms of economy, in terms of technological development, scientific development, it's really very strong country that many states desire to have contact with Israel, where once it wasn't such a situation. Even China, India, Russia, I'm not talking even about United States, even EU, European Union has interest to be in contact because of the intelligence, technological development. So this is the situation that we have acknowledged and recognized when we are talking today. I'm talking about today. We like to talk about peace process. Next one, it's complex. Really only Hafez kind of alluded to the situation of the Palestinian side. But obviously on the Palestinian side, there is schism between Fatah and between Hamas. They argue not only about ideology, but also about ways of collaboration. And Dr. Ziad Darwish did not mention, but I will mention how the present president of PA is viewed by most of the Palestinians in the West Bank and probably Gaza, which is another story. I will not extend on it, but it's a very troubling story for me as a Jew, how Abu Mazen is managing the relationship with Israel. So it should be noted. And the last point of the context is that the conflict became irrelevant to the present state of the world. If you follow, the situation is that United States is not interested at this stage to get involved. And maybe unfortunately, if you want, United States is a kind of leader of at least Western world, but Biden is preoccupied with different problems, internal problems, with obviously we have to talk about COVID, which is very troubling at the moment, a very big crisis that nobody sees the end of it. And, the climate problem is not interested into stepping in as well as other really states. European Union is not interested. So we are in a very, very bad situation, at least for the present time. And later we'll talk about the other. Then few words about the Israeli Jewish population. Israeli Jewish population is on the right side. If I would have to give a number, I would say that about 80% of the Israeli Jews are with what we call rightist opinions, or if you want, hawkish opinions, or if you want, conservative opinions. But this is a situation, and we have to realize, I will not review how did we reach this situation, but at present, this what is going on, which means that most of the Israeli Jews, up to maybe 90%, believe that the conflict is about justful goals, which means that most of the Israelis, great majority, believes that the West Bank, or as they call it, Judah and Shomron, is God-given or is required to be with Israel because of security reason, because of security, history, tradition, religion reasons. But if you ask young generation, which is another point, which is very important, so the younger generations are moving to the right and moving toward more religious orientation. Iris, do I understand that I should finish? Yes? So one more statement. So at the moment, when you see the leadership under Bennett, under Lapid, under Saar, you have to understand that on the issue of the conflict and occupation, the great majority of Israelis support the, if you want, the practical annexation or implicit annexation. I would say they view the Palestinian and Arabs in dehumanizing view. They feel insecurity, which is a kind of paradoxical statement, but it is, and they feel, which will shock probably many of the listeners, they feel that they are the victims of the conflict. Okay, so I provided some kind of background in order to understand what is going on in Israel. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Fatma, I would like to hear you more speaking about your own history, but we don't have time for it. Maybe next time. We don't have time. Never mind. Fatma, to you.
Okay. Iris, you mentioned about our personal perspective. From childhood, we consider Palestine is our case. And in the Middle East, we had a lot of problems. It is the area of conflict and a lot of political situation and aggression. But from my point of view, most of my people in the GCC country and maybe the Arab world and maybe the world believe that Palestine being occupied twice, 1948, 1967. And unfortunately, the people there live in a situation that even the United Nations mentioned that in Gaza, people's situation in 2020, it is not suitable for a human being. Professor Danny gave us very, good information about what's going on in Israel. And from the point of Ziad, Mason, and Hafel, it could be the same thing that we believe that the Palestinians live in such a miserable life and situation there. And I would say that, the area we had or our feeling towards, what we saw of conflict through the Iraqi-Iranian, the Yemen situation, Lebanon, also Gaza. It had so many issues, but although it is not we have to deal with it. We have to deal with it, first of all, as a human being. I think what being mentioned about the situation there, I would like to mention kind of a sentence that mentioned with one of the journalists, Israeli journalists. It's been in a documentary Irish film about the situation there. And he said, there is an elephant in the room. And everyone knows that the elephant, but no one would say anything. The elephant is the Israeli occupation for the land of Palestine. And Iris, when you asked me about the Holy Land, I bet you mean Jerusalem. because we had another Holy Land in Mecca and Medina, and maybe another Holy Land in Iraq, in Najaf. So I hope you mention on, I hope you mean only for my point, and talk after we leave. You know, Professor Dani mentioned that for their safety and for their security, the Israeli believe that they have to keep the West Bank and Gaza. Of course, they would think that because they occupied the land being stolen from the Palestinian. So, of course, they need to secure themselves, especially they hold the most important issues in the world. They hold media and they hold money. And we know about that, but unfortunately, we can't do, and we don't have any magic stick. For what Hafid, Mr. Filfil mentioned about one of the ladies who hold her passport, that she was in Palestine. I think that also Golda Meir got the same passport that showed that she was in Palestine and born there. Of course, they have the right for the Jewish and for the Palestinian, even the Christian who been there, to be in their land. I hope that the future will be much better, not better, much better, and we maybe not us, maybe the coming generation, maybe the 20 percentage of the Israeli young people who believe that the peace is very important, and it will be, it can be. From also my point of view, I would say that the word would, as Professor Dani mentioned, that they would have a good relationship with and cooperation with Israel because of their progress and development and all that kind of things. Of course, no one can deny that. And if they had a kind of management, you know, that we need, not in the Middle East, but the whole world. Hopefully, I give my point of view, and I don't know what to say really, but I would say, and we experienced that in my family through the Iraqi war. I had one sister-in-law from Iraq and one sister-in-law, originally, she's Kuwaiti, but originally from Iran. And it was very important. You cannot imagine when we gathered while we have our meals. I mean, it is possible that we gather in such an environment. We raised the point of peace is not impossible, because there is nothing impossible if we want to. And as Mason mentioned in the beginning, that the peace should be inside, not inside our territory, but inside ourselves. So I wish that I express what I want to say, and I hope it's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatma. Thank you so much. So before I will open the floor for the audience to ask questions or to bring comments, only very briefly. try to refer to the title of our discussion. Is there any hope for peace here in Palestine, Israel, in this area? The question is, of course, what do we mean by peace? Ziad, Dr. Ziad, you were referring to the word, to the term peace, and what is peace? How the peace looks when we are talking about peace between Israel and Jordan, or Israel and Egypt. So what do we mean by peace? Is there any hope to have something here that is close to peace, and how? So I know it is a big question, but maybe you could refer to this issue very shortly about hope, about peace, about how. Give us some hope. So we begin the circle again. So Ziad, please.
Well, sometime I start not believing in peace. I say it's like a curse, the word peace, for us Palestinians as well as Israelis. Okay, and talking about peace in Palestine, saying, how can I believe in what you are saying, peace, while we are seeing soldiers day and night, and seeing these settlers that are occupying our land and demolishing our houses and shooting on us and cutting our streets and jeopardizing our agriculture, okay, by all means. So how can you think about peace, really? And on the other hand, in Israel, of course, I mean, I agree with Professor Batal. Annexation is not prevented. I mean, annexation could happen anytime, while the whole world is just sitting aside and looking what happened. Okay, and I like what Maysam say, that we can together. Okay, together we can do a lot. Okay, but we are really a minority in regarding to the whole world that can influence immediately and instantly to change things on the field. So peace in Israel, I don't know, lots of friends in Israel told me that peace become a curse word that we don't want to mention. And in the minute that you say peace, oh, they know that you consider to be on the left wing parties or whatever, okay, organizations. So peace have a condition. Conditions is to give the right to the others that you occupied 54 years, for God's sake, suffering. Give us our rights to establish our independent state alongside your state, the state of Israel, and then peace, we can feel it, we can respirate, we can live with it, okay, for the sake of the future of our children, our grandchildren, and your grandchildren as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ziad. Maysam,
I just want to say one sentence, and maybe I will end by it. And I think this is very important for us. We have no privilege to lose hope. This is what I want to say.
What? I didn't hear you very well.
We don't have a privilege to lose hope. And this is why I'm continuing to do what I'm doing, and this is why I will continue to struggle in order to end the occupation and to establishing the Palestinian state, because doing something is not doing, and nothing is not an option. That's it.
So you believe in your power, in the power of advancing.
I believe in our power, but also I think that, you know, even though the situation is very hard and, you know, and I understand people who are losing hope. I understand that the situation is not ideal. And yes, in Israel, I think also the new government, the government of change is not a government that will seek peace, even though we have leftist parties in this government, but this is not the issue that this government will work to solve. And yes, I feel uncomfortable about this, this fact, but I think that we should not lose hope, even though peace or ending the occupation will not be in our period or in the next, let's say, 20 years, but we have no privilege. We have no privilege to lose hope. And if we don't struggle, and if we will not try to convince other people to join us, so I don't know, I cannot think about it.
Thank you. Hafez? You are muted, Hafez. We don't hear you.
Sorry. Peace is made by the strong people, not the weak. Peace will come sooner or later. There is a hope at the end of the tunnel. This area and Holy Land, Palestine and Israel, will live as a neighbor with peace and dignity and human rights.
Thank you, Hafez.
You're welcome.
Daniel Bartal.
Yeah, you know, first I want to say that admire, knowing a little bit personally, Mason, and I know Ziad is part of the networks that I reading his words, sentences very often, and for the hope, you know, because, right, I agree with Mason, without hope, there is really not possibility. But on the realistic side, you know, with the hope, and the fact is that I continue to be an activist, that I continue to struggle is a sign of hope. Because if you lose hope, you probably will go to New Zealand, which is much pleasant place. But on a realistic way, I must say that in the long term, you know, Mason, Hafez, Ziad, and Fatma, I am 100% sure that Palestinians will achieve independence. I am, because this is a route that the civilization is going on. And I will not give a talk about the progress, but this is the situation. We are moving, you know, think about the Human Rights Declaration only in 48, and, you know, after hundreds and thousands years of history, we are moving there. 2 steps forward, 1 back, but we are moving. So I don't know when, in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, Palestinians will be free, because we will not be free until you will be free. But in the short term, I must say I am pessimistic. I don't see the vector that can move neither in Israel, nor in Palestinian side, nor in the external forces that can play a role at the moment. So we are stuck, and unfortunately it may last for years until it will move. I see one sign of really movement is that more and more people in the world, including in Israel, the last one was Amos Shoken, the publisher of Haaretz, realized that Israel is apartheid state. And, you know, it takes dozens of years but it will eventually will be subdued.
Thank you, Danny. Fatma?
Thank you, Iris. I think one of the questions you asked about what's the meaning of peace, as Mr. Hafid said, that there is no peace, the peace coming with the power. And I bet also that there is no peace without justice. According to my belief, Allah have 99 names. One of them is Salam, it means peace. And also when we meant peace, that to live a good life and have also a nice end in heaven. It's coming all together with the word peace, coming security, happiness, joy, especially with the peace inside us. Also, for the whole world, peace means prosperity and development. What I can say that there is nothing, as I mentioned, impossible. And with bridging a lot of good, you know, like the people who work in the occupied area and in Gaza and West Bank, regarding the authorities there, there is a light at the end of the tunnel coming through the people who would like to live in security and in peace for the aim of their children. I remember once, Iris, a woman mentioned that I don't want my child to go to the war. And especially we know that no one can gain, you know, through war and through, you know, the armies or whatever. The victory that we have from our people, our spirits, our nice and good people. Thank you. I hope I mentioned what you asked.
Thank you.
There is also a point that one of the chats I saw that that we are talking about a kind of theoretical issues, and the question: what about if we can confess the colleague beside me or write to me about the situation there, and how can we can create peace? I would answer in a question. Let us have the power of the decision makers and see what we can do as women. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatma. Thank you very much. I will open now a space as long as we can for questions. Only I want to say something on my behalf. I think that listening to you all, something raised in me, and is that we will have another talk, and I promise to arrange it. And then the next talk will be with young people. I think that maybe part of the answer for the third question is maybe the answer is there in the young people. Maybe leadership that might arise from the younger people, maybe other way of thinking, other perspectives. We are talking about conditioned mind. Maybe mind are different in the younger population. So this is what I got from your talk. Next time, young people on this screen. Yeah.
So the question is, the speakers here all know each other and have a nice relationship. And, hypothetically, if you had the power to negotiate a peace, what would it look like? And how would you convince your colleagues to the right of you? I know it's a hypothetical question, but the people here are the most agreeable amongst everyone. I'm just wondering what it might look like.
We don't know each other all, not all the panelists now knows each other. But I want to say that me, for myself, I was in a lot of dialogue group between Israelis and Palestinians, and in many concepts and in many situations. And actually, I just finished a group like this a month ago when we talked about what does it mean to reconciliate and the reconciliation process between Israelis and Palestinians. And I just want to say that in order to succeed in the negotiation, the two sides should understand that, are willing of being open to hear other views or to hear the narrative, the different narratives. And Danny talked about narratives. And yes, we are coming from a different narratives. But if we have the ability to understand what is this narrative and what is the history that came out of this narrative, I think that we will do a lot of progress. Because if you talk to the people want the same thing. They want to live in peace. They want to live in security. They want to ensure that their children and grandchildren will live in peace and security. And I think that this is, goes also for Palestinians and also for Jewish Israelis. And if we understand that in order to reach, we need not only to reconcile, but we need to give up some, assumption that we lived all of these years with. And we need also to understand that, that all, and now I'm talking for Israelis, the Israelis need to understand that they are the strong one in this issue. They are the occupiers. They occupy the land and they are occupating the people. And yes, sometimes they have a lot of, reasons, and they can give you hundreds of reasons why they are doing that. But in the minute that they will understand that the other side also is suffering and is a victim of the history and the situation, I think that thing can be progressed. So knowledge, a lot of knowledge, a lot of understanding, a lot of open-minded will help to, to begin a new kind of negotiations.
It's not really a question. It's actually just a comment that occurred to me after listening in and getting a sense of the hopelessness here and there that I kind of detected in people's sharing of the complexity of the whole situation. And I pulled out Margaret Mead's beautiful quote that I think many of you know: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And I think if you look at it also from a historical perspective, the whole movement, civil rights, ending slavery, what else? Apartheid, I mean, you name it. It was never sort of changed or transformed by the whole collective sort of agreeing, in a gradual way. It was messy. It was ugly sometimes, and I think, as Professor Daniel alluded to earlier, sometimes you go a little bit forward, sometimes you go a little bit sideways, but then the general trajectory ultimately, and the moral arc, as Martin Luther King used to say, I think, is always upwards. And therefore, I think it's also important to remember, not that I'm a physicist in any way, but if you look at it also from a quantum perspective, there comes a point where enough people begin to really do whatever they can to sort of infuse energy in whatever way they can, and this ultimately will shift the bar on progress, because progress ultimately is inevitable, but it's a question of the time and the suffering that it will take in order for that to manifest.